What if the smartest kid in the world grew up, had a daughter, found love, and then his completely unhinged family blew the whole thing up? Because that is exactly what's happening, and Malcolm in the Middle is back, baby. Okay, let's just take a second. Because if you grew up watching Malcolm in the Middle, you already know what this means. You know the chaos. You know the screaming. You know Hal and his tidy witties doing something absolutely unhinged in the garage, while Lois is losing her mind in the kitchen, and Reese is somehow making everything worse just by existing in the same room. That show was a masterpiece of beautiful, hilarious dysfunction. And it ended back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago. 20 years. And now, it's coming back. The revival is officially titled Life's Still Unfair. Which, honestly, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Because if there's one thing Malcolm's life has never been, it is fair. Not for one single day. And judging by everything we're learning about this revival, that is not about to change. The buzz around this project has been absolutely electric. Fans who grew up with this show are now adults. They have jobs, mortgages, maybe even kids of their own. And the idea of seeing Malcolm navigate that same messy, unpredictable world as a grown man, it's hitting different. It feels personal. It feels earned. And the details coming out of this production are making it sound like everything we could have possibly hoped for. So let's get into it, because there's a lot to unpack here, and some of it is genuinely surprising. So here's where we find Malcolm when the revival picks up. He's an adult now. He's got a career, and not just any career, because remember, this is the kid who is literally a genius. The show always hinted that Malcolm was destined for something enormous. And it sounds like that trajectory held up. He's built a real life for himself. But more importantly, and this is where it gets really interesting, Malcolm is a father. He has a daughter named Leah. And if you thought Malcolm growing up was complicated, try imagining what it's like for this man to raise a kid while carrying around all that psychological baggage from his childhood. The guy was simultaneously the smartest person in every room he ever walked into and the most emotionally tortured teenager on television. That combination does not exactly set you up for a smooth, uncomplicated adult life. But Malcolm is trying. He is genuinely, earnestly trying to do right by his daughter. And that becomes the emotional core of everything we're hearing about this revival. Because Malcolm's whole journey in the original series was about this tension between who he was supposed to be and who he actually was. And now that tension has a new dimension. He's not just figuring himself out anymore. He's figuring himself out for someone else. For Leah. For his kid. And then, because life cannot just leave this man alone for 5 minutes, there is Tristan. Tristan is Malcolm's girlfriend. And she is played by Kiana Madeira, who you might know from Fear Street. So right away, the casting tells you something. This is not a throwaway character. This is someone with depth, with presence, with a full life of her own. And Kiana Madeira has been talking about her character, and what she's revealed is genuinely fascinating. Here's the thing about Tristan and Malcolm's relationship that makes it so compelling from a storytelling perspective. They have history before the revival even begins. Real history. Kiana explained that Malcolm and Tristan have actually been dating for almost a year before the events of the show pick up. Almost a year. That is not a new relationship. That is a relationship with roots, with inside jokes and arguments that got resolved and moments that mattered. But here's the twist, and this is the part that's really clever. Almost none of that backstory happens on screen. It's off-screen history. It's the kind of storytelling that trusts the audience to feel the weight of a relationship without being shown every single moment of it. You're not watching them fall in love. You're watching them already in love, already navigating something real, and you have to piece together who these two people are to each other from the way they interact, the way they communicate, the shorthand they've developed. That's sophisticated writing. That's the kind of choice that separates a good revival from a great one. And it sounds like the creative team behind Life's Still Unfair is absolutely making the right calls. But here's where Malcolm being Malcolm really comes through. Because even after nearly a year of dating Tristan, even knowing how he feels about her, he's been hesitating about one very specific thing. He hasn't introduced Tristan to Leah yet. And before you call him out for that, just think about it from his perspective for a second. This is a man who was raised in absolute chaos. His childhood was a masterclass in things going wrong in spectacular and unpredictable ways. He knows, better than almost anyone, how much the adults in a kid's life shape them. He knows the stakes. He watched his own parents, Hal and Lois, love each other ferociously while also creating conditions of maximum instability for their children on a near-daily basis. So Malcolm is careful. He wants to be sure that what he has with Tristan is real, is lasting, is serious enough to bring into his daughter's world. Because Leah isn't just going to meet a girlfriend. She's potentially going to meet someone who becomes part of her life, part of her story. And Malcolm is not willing to gamble with that. That hesitation, that caution, that is actually the most emotionally intelligent thing Malcolm has ever done. And it says so much about how this character has grown. Now let's talk about how this all came together behind the scenes, because this is where it gets really interesting from a production standpoint. Kiana Madeira has spoken about working closely with creator Linwood Boomer and director Ken Kwapis, both of whom are back for the revival, to build out Tristan's entire world from scratch. Because Tristan isn't just the girlfriend. She has a life. She has a career. She's a physiotherapist, which tells you immediately that she's someone who works with people at their most vulnerable, someone with patience and empathy built into her professional DNA. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate character choice that says something about who Malcolm would be drawn to as an adult. Kiana has talked about how much conversation went into filling in the blanks. The backstory, the details of Tristan's personal life, the texture of who she is outside of her relationship with Malcolm. The creative team didn't just hand her a character and say, figure it out. They built it together. And that collaborative process is exactly why Tristan feels like a fully realized person rather than a plot device. And then, Hal and Lois happen. Because here's the premise that pulls everything together. Malcolm's parents are celebrating their anniversary. And in true Hal and Lois fashion, they're not just celebrating quietly like normal human beings. They're dragging their son back into the family orbit, back into the madness, back into the specific gravitational field of dysfunction that Malcolm spent his entire childhood trying to escape and his entire adult life trying to process. Bryan Cranston as Hal and Jane Kaczmarek as Lois, they are back. And just thinking about those two characters in 2025, older, slightly wiser, but fundamentally unchanged in their capacity for beautiful chaos, it's already too much. Hal, with his passionate hobbies and his enormous heart and his complete inability to function under pressure. Lois with her iron will and her volcanic love and her absolute refusal to let anyone in her family have a normal day. Together again. The anniversary celebration becomes the engine that drives the whole story. It's the thing that pulls Malcolm out of his carefully constructed adult life and drops him right back in the middle. Pun absolutely intended, of everything he came from. And it's not just Hal and Lois. Frankie Muniz is back as Malcolm, of course, and he has spoken so warmly about returning to this character, about what it means to revisit someone you played at such a formative point in your own life. Christopher Masterson is back as Francis. Justin Burfield is back as Reese. The whole family is reassembling. Now, there's one notable absence that fans have been talking about. Eric Persullivan, who played Dewey, is not returning for the revival. Dewey was always the wild card, the artistic soul, the one sibling who marched to a completely different drummer. His absence will be felt. The show will need to address it somehow. But the core of what made this family extraordinary is still intact and ready to burn everything down one more time. And here's the part that fans are going to absolutely love. Tristan gets pulled in. She doesn't get to sit this one out. She doesn't get to watch from a safe distance while Malcolm's family does their thing. She gets dragged in. And watching someone who doesn't have 20 years of experience surviving this family suddenly get hit with the full force of Hal and Lois and Reese and the accumulated chaos of the Wilkerson household, that is going to be television gold. Because Tristan is sharp. She's grounded. She's a physiotherapist. She deals with pain for a living. But nothing in her professional training prepared her for this. That here's the bottom line. Life's Still Unfair isn't just nostalgia. It isn't just a victory lap for a beloved show. It's a genuine story about what happens when the chaotic, complicated, deeply human mess of your childhood follows you into adulthood, and what it means to let someone new into that world. Malcolm found something real with Tristan. He built something careful and considered and worth protecting. And now his family is about to test every single inch of it. Fans have waited 20 years for this, and everything we're hearing says it was worth every second. Life's still unfair, and honestly, we wouldn't have it any other way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your Malcolm in the Middle memories in the comments, because we want to hear them. We'll see you in the next one.